When we get into education, we think of the task of what goes on with the teacher in the classroom, and sometimes we forget that if that classroom is not well equipped, if it's not clean, if things aren't working, the teacher cannot do the job as well as he or she would expect that they should be able to do. So maintenance operations is a huge portion of what keeps your school in the shape you would like it to be. So, Ray, would you talk a little bit about what the principal's role is in either one of those?
Absolutely. I would break this down between operations, which is more the custodial side, and then maintenance. So I'll kind of bifurcate my comments to those. Principals are in charge, in my mind, to the day-to-day operations of the school district. I've seen districts, and we've done this before, where you might have a custodial supervisor in charge of the day custodian and night custodians. You may have the principal in charge of the day custodian, and then the night custodians are to a supervisor, or the principal's in charge of both. Either way, I think the principal needs to be involved in the operations of the custodial staff. I think it's absolutely critical for the principal to know what your day custodian is doing, what the day custodian should be doing, and that you monitor that and can see the custodian doing those tasks. I think the things that are vitally important are opening the campus in the morning. I think many of you may have 5-bar pits that need to be raked and fluffed in doing so. I think blowing the campus off because they've got sand and dirt on a blacktop area that needs to be moved and blown and made safe for the students. I think the principal, as they walk around, needs to be aware of all of those things that a custodian should be doing and giving direction to this custodial staff to do so. I think at the nighttime, I think the principal needs to know what's being cleaned and when. Many school districts during these budget cut times have reduced custodial staff significantly. So there may be that the rooms aren't cleaned every night, or that the trash is only emptied nightly, and that every other night they may get vacuumed. You need to know what the expectation is of the district so that you can manage your talk with your custodians about what they're doing and not have too high an expectation that doesn't match the custodial load that your district is offered.
One of the things I observed as a principal was that some custodians were having to spend too much time in a single teacher's room.
That's exactly. That is another thing. A teacher might have lots of areas that they're doing, I want to say tempura, or they've got paper on the floor. That would be where a principal could help tremendously with a custodial staff, in that you need to make it equal. And some teachers have an ability to make more areas to be cleaned up than others do. And so that's where a principal can help the custodial staff out tremendously.
And so some of it is what I've seen in many schools is there's certain expectations of how the students have to leave the room, and the teacher makes sure they leave the room
absolutely,
that way.
Absolutely. And that again, that is just huge support for your custodial staff, and that would go a long way. One, to make sure your expectations are being met, because the principal doesn't want all the time going to one teacher's room. That's not fair to the other teachers in doing so.
What about major maintenance or just things that need to be fixed, and principals often get very frustrated because their needs aren't being met?
I hear that often. When you do maintenance, I think what I have done in the past is, when there has been money, in the last 5 years, we have reduced our maintenance budgets significantly since 2008. But when we get back to the proper planning for long-range maintenance, I felt it's always good to go out and meet with every principal and see what are the things that you want done, would like to see over the summer. And they actually compile a list, and we, the director of maintenance, goes out with me, and we have a list so that the principals can see what we think is important. We get an opportunity to get what the principals think is important. And we actually go back, and then we'll combine the two, and then come back through and say, these are the things we can fund. We would send them back out to the principals for confirmation, that they get a chance to argue, if you will, for what was not included, and I get a chance to listen to that. By and large, we've met all of the principal's interest at that point, and I think that's important for a principal to know. You still need to have input into what goes on as the major maintenance items. Blacktop needs to be fixed, a roof is leaking. Those are things that you need to hear, and you need to be able to communicate those things to the director of maintenance and the assistant superintendent of business.
What if you feel something is a safety hazard? Do you just wait for your turn on that item, or how do you want them to handle that?
Safety items have to be handled in an immediate fashion. And I tell our administrators that you take all of your staff or whatever you need to do and make it safe, whether it's boarding up a window, putting cones and yellow tape around a hazard. All of those things need to be done in an immediate fashion with your current staff. And then calling facilities and saying, hey, I think this is a health and safety issue. I want you aware. And you are responsible for safing off everything until facilities can get there. I think a call is necessary, not just putting it into a work order system when it comes to an emergency. You need to get a hold of a body and communicate the imminent danger that is there.
Well, I think you've clearly showed that this is a team effort between the district and the principal. And it would behoove you not to assume, especially those of you who end up being an administrator in a district other than your current location, that you find out how it's done in that district so that you are following those procedures and not making assumptions about what you thought the procedures were in your previous assignment.